Hello there, welcome to Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. We're in the run-up now to the Batman being released. As you know, I'm a huge Batman fan. It's just like, whenever there's a new Batman movie out, it just, yeah, that's where I'm at. So I've booked my ticket for the first showing, and I can't wait. So, in the run-up to the new Batman film, I thought I'd do a few Batman-related videos. It's as good as excuse as any, I guess. So I've got two coming. I've got this one, which is going to be my ranking of all the Batman villains that appeared in the Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher era of Batman. It was kind of its own era, I think, before Nolan came along, and that will, of course, be the second video. I'll be ranking all the Nolan Batman villains. 9 in all for the Burton Schumacher years, and 9, possibly 10 in all, depending on who I include for the Nolan years. So yeah, obviously this is the Burton and Schumacher video. Don't think that this is all about performance, okay? This isn't about who gave the best performance, therefore they are the best villain. It's not about that. Performance has a part to play in it, of course, but it's mainly down to how well executed they are from a writing standpoint, how threatening they are to Batman as a villain, the threat that they pose, how scary they might be. If I was doing a video on who gave the best performance as a villain, we're talking completely different list. But this is, what do I get out of them as a character? How engaging are they as a character? The same rules will apply for the Nolan ones as well, but this is my list, not your list. So there's no need to get grouchy about it if it doesn't kind of match your opinions. It is just that, at the end of the day, an opinion. But let's get into it.
No beauty. Just the beast.
So Bane first appeared on film as a live-action character in Batman and Robin. Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin, a film that is so synonymous with being terrible that, yeah, Bane is just one of the many, many reasons it is terrible. Now, the film was released in 1997, and at that time, if you'd have plucked a comic book villain, a Batman comic book villain, that is, out of his rogues gallery that was big, that should have been big business at that time, then Bane was it. The comic books had just gotten through the whole Nightfall storyline. Bane was like the biggest villain you could think of at the time. He certainly did the most damage to Batman of any of his rogues gallery. So to get to see him in a movie, a live action movie, the prospect of that was quite tantalizing. Now, Batman Forever wasn't a great film, but it's an enjoyable film. And there was enough in that to make me excited about the prospect of any villains in Joel Schumacher's hands, to see what they do with him. So when Bane was announced, I was like, this is going to be great. It wasn't great. It was terrible. They've taken one of the smartest, strongest villains in comic book history, in Batman comic book history, and they've turned him into a lackey with no thought processes. He's a grunting monkey. It's embarrassing. The design of it looks terrible. The costume that he's wearing, he looks like a terrible luchador wrestler. A lot of people said he looks like that in the comic books, but I get the style kind of coming from a luchador, but he never really looked like, he didn't look like Nacho Libre, put it that way, in the comic books. And here he kind of does, but with the horrible veiny thing going on to show that he's got, it just, yeah, bad character design, bad performance, bad use of the character. You could take a dozen other characters from the comic books and make them Poison Ivy's lackey. What you don't do is take Bane and make him Poison Ivy's lackey.
Hey there, pretty birdie.
Give yourself up. If you surrender...
To you.
Speaking of Poison Ivy, number 8, it's Poison Ivy. This is a character that I've never been that fond of, to be honest, in the comic books. The stories that involve her in the comic books that I like are the ones that try to keep it a little bit more grounded. When she's shooting plants up out of the ground and all that stuff and making crazy plant people, it gets a bit too far out there for me personally. I don't know how they're ever going to put that version of that character on screen successfully. They attempt to here and they fail miserably. Now, I did say that this list isn't necessarily about the performance. However, of all the villains on show here, this has to be the worst from a performance level. Uma Thurman, I think she's a good actress if she's put into the right hands, if she's given the right director to work with, the right script. This ain't it, obviously, for anyone involved, quite frankly, not just her. But yeah, I don't know what she's doing here. When she's trying to be sexy, it comes off as just weird. When she's trying to be the kind of geeky scientist type, it's just proper over the top. She takes it all the way to number 11, and it's an embarrassing performance to watch. There's scenes where she's talking to herself, where she's going through her fiendish plan in her own mind, and it's embarrassing. You feel embarrassed for the actor that she had to chew on that dialogue and try to do something with it and fail miserably. Now, at least Arnold Schwarzenegger got puns. He was able to just play with puns. Stupid, ridiculous puns, pathetic script, but memorable. With Poison Ivy, Uma Thurman gets given not even puns, just like, well, actually she does. She gets a few puns, but they're kind of weaved into actual dialogue. I say that in the loosest sense. And it just, yeah, it's embarrassing for her. You know, it's embarrassing to watch her in this. Terrible performance. On top of all that, the character herself, again, really bad design. Her costume, when she's got the green costume with the leaf design down the legs, that's tolerable. That's certainly the best costume they have throughout her plethora of costumes in this film. There seems to be a costume change for most of the characters within a good like 5-10 minute period, because obviously they wanted to sell toys, so they wanted different toy designs that they could put out there that would relate to the film. So yeah, the green costume, the leafy costume she's got going on, that's actually quite a nice design as far as Batman and Robin goes with its design work. Her other stuff, just, it looks horrible. It doesn't do anything for her figure at all. That makes me sound like a chauvinist pig, but like this is a character that is built on sex appeal. You know, that's one of the main things about the character. She uses her sex appeal within the comic books to entice men and this, that, and the other. And yeah, those costumes not doing it for Uma Thurman. It's got to be said. And it's just, again, bad design work. Really bad design work. The character itself doesn't pose any threat, to be perfectly honest. She's a manipulator. She's the one who kind of manipulates Mr. Freeze and gets him to do her bidding. She goes a roundabout way of doing it. Beyond that, she gets her ass handed to her by a newbie. Alicia Silverstone's Batgirl. She kind of comes to the fray within 5 minutes and takes out one of the major villains. It's just, yeah, there's no real threat there. And then there's an attempt made to kind of go the comic book route of having her have, plants that she can control and stuff. But again, it looks like paper mache, Blue Peter kind of special effects. Here's one I made earlier. It looks ridiculous.
I'm afraid that my condition has left me cold to your pleas of mercy.
At number 7, rounding out the cast of villains from Batman and Robin, it is, of course, Mr. Freeze. I kind of like the design of his costume. It's not great. You put it in any other film, it's going to look terrible. But within the context of this film and within the context of a kind of Batman 1966 style villain, it kind of works. And that's what Schumacher is clearly going for here. I think that's what the studio were going for here. They were trying to take it back to what most people remember as being the primary visual interpretation of Batman when it came to the screen, was the 66 Adam West show. And that's kind of what this movie goes for. It's going with that vibe. And in that regard, I think that Schwarzenegger's villain, Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze, it sort of works. You take a big name in Hollywood, you put him in a guest spot as the villain of the week, have him throwing out bad puns and stuff. It's entertaining. Batman and Robin as a film in general is far more entertaining than it should be, but it is because of how bad it is. Most of the entertainment value, I think, probably comes from Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze. Again, pretty low down on this list. The trifecta of villainy from Batman and Robin is, it's the lowest of the low when it comes to any Batman movie, to be honest. But yeah, all three of them, bottom of this list. Schwarzenegger tries to do the best with what he's got, but what he's got isn't a right lot, whether that's his acting talent or the script that he's got to work with. But, we get a few decent action sequences in the film. He goes toe-to-toe with Batman numerous times, and he does pose a citywide threat in the sense that, his master plan is to freeze the whole city. When we get to the end of the film, he goes some way to achieving that. Batman stops him ultimately, but yeah, the threat he poses is genuine within the context of this film. But again, because the film itself is so cartoonish, you never really feel like anyone's in danger.
Are you gonna kill me?
Maybe, maybe not. You could say we're of two minds on the subject.
Number 6 is Two-Face, as played by Tommy Lee Jones in Batman Forever. The main problem with this villain in particular, I think, is that the studio wanted another kind of Jack Nicholson Joker type. And I think Tommy Lee Jones does his best with what he's given script-wise. But again, it's not like... It's not the Citizen Kane of comic book movie script. I like the design of his character. It took some getting used to. I think the redness or the pinkness on his face is a bit too much. Obviously, when you get to Aaron Eckhart in The Dark Knight, much better design, much more kind of gritty, gnarly design. This has to be... It has to be okay for kids. It is one of those bizarre concoctions, is Batman Forever, is that there's stuff in there that isn't quite suitable for young kids, and yet it is almost marketed to kids. I don't think the studio quite knew what they were doing when it came to marketing these films way back when. They wanted to have their cake and eat it. They wanted stuff that adults could latch onto, but they also needed it to be kid friendly. So what we get is this bizarre day-glow neon world that Schumacher kind of creates off the back of what Tim Burton gave us, along with these colourful villains that, again, feel like they could be out of the 60s TV show, but also with a slightly darker edge to them. So Tommy Lee Jones, Two-Face, again, I do like the costume. I think it's within the context of the world Schumacher creates. It's a pretty nice design. It's just, other than howling and cackling and being evil, Two-Face doesn't really do that much. Admittedly, he does kill Dick Grayson's parents, so there is that emotional hook. It's a testament to the bad writing that Two-Face doesn't really make that much of an impact. Basically, he gets the rug pulled out from under him by Jim Carrey's Riddler. Jim Carrey steals every scene. He just chews on the scenery. He knows what film he's in, or if he doesn't know what film he's in, he certainly makes the film. He decides the tone of the film, does Jim Carrey. As a result, Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face just kind of gets forgotten. When it's just him on screen, like the opening sequence, there's a whole 20-minute opening that almost feels like it could be the end of the movie, where Two-Face is having a showdown with Batman in this helicopter. It's quite a nice action sequence, save for some annoying security guard that's kind of embroiled in the whole thing. But yeah, that face-off between Batman and Two-Face is quite entertaining. And while we have showdowns like that between Batman and Two-Face, I find Two-Face entertaining. But as a character in general, he's a bit one note. He's just this character who's got a gimmick. Oh, it's Two-Face. He flips a coin. He does everything in twos. They play with that gimmick, but they don't actually give him any character. You know, all the stuff about him being a district attorney once upon a time, they don't really delve into that. They don't make this guy a character. They just seize on the gimmick, run with that. He doesn't pose much of a citywide threat. To me, he feels like one of those villains that's just happy robbing banks. So, you know, like Riddler in the film is the one who's got the big grand plan that's going to affect the whole city, whereas Two-Face just kind of gets dragged along with it. He almost is convinced by Riddler to work for him in many ways. There's a bit of pushback on that from Two-Face. You know, there are times when he pushes back against Riddler, and it's clear that out of the two of them, if the two of them got into any kind of physical altercation, Two-Face would kick his ass. But he's not the brains of the outfit, which is a shame, because in the comic books, Two-Face, he's an intelligent guy. You know, he doesn't lack intelligence.
Intimidate me. Bully me if it makes you feel big. I mean, it's not like you can just kill me.
Actually, it's a lot like that.
Number 5 is Max Schreck. Now, this is the character played by Christopher Walken in Batman Returns, directed by Tim Burton. And this is a character that was created for Batman Returns. So he's not lifted from the comic book. I debated whether or not to even put him on, but actually, when you look at the film, he is the main villain. You know, like the freaks of the film, you know, like there's very much a thing with Tim Burton in the same sense that it is with Guillermo del Toro. Tim Burton always kind of sympathizes with the freaks, and he makes Catwoman and Penguin these creatures that you can almost empathize with. That there is a sense of heart there. You know, there's a reason Penguin became the way he is, a reason that you can like literally feel sorry for him with, and the same with Catwoman. Whereas Max Schreck, he's a corporate douchebag. He's the reason Catwoman is created. You know, he's the one. He's responsible for Catwoman being created, and then at the end of the day, he's the one who kind of turns the tables on Penguin and manipulates him for his own ends. There's a bit of a return manipulation going on between Penguin and Max Schreck, and it's a case of who's going to come out on top. But Max Schreck is the one who's trying to eat the city alive, basically, through power plants and things like that. He's just a despicable character. He has maybe one redeeming shining light in how he cares for his son, but even with that, it's yeah, there's not as much heart to this guy as there is with Selina Kyle or Oswald Cobblepot. Christopher Walken makes a great villain anyway. He's a great actor, and it was nice to see them create this character, create this villain that, you know, had no comic book kind of iteration for you to judge against. You couldn't look at it and go, oh, well, that's not comic book accurate. Doesn't need to be, because it's a character they created from scratch, and it's one that I quite enjoy.
You're not the mayor. Things change.
And number 4 is Penguin, again from Batman Returns. This is just a monstrous creation. Danny DeVito really throws himself into this. You know, eating raw fish on camera, the makeup job that took hours on end. He just looks disgusting. All the black ink coming out of his mouth from years of living in the sewers and eating nothing but oily fish. So he's literally just got fish oil in between his teeth all the time, and it's coming out. It's a monster in the truest sense of the word, but a monster that, again, as I say, you can identify with. When you have this child who is thrown away essentially by his own parents at birth, for looking like a monster, then obviously his psyche feeds into that. When you're told you're a monster for long enough, if you're kicked out onto the fringes of society, then you become that which you are told you are. You become a monster. So again, like I say, it's a character that you can empathise with, but he's still an out-and-out villain. You know, this is a character who takes all the children of Gotham City with the intent to kill them, all the firstborn sons of Gotham City. And it's just, yeah, it's quite despicable. He poses a genuine threat. The fact that he lives in the sewers as well, and he has this little army that he can send up and do his bidding, means that he can get you anywhere. And it's so there's a scariness to the character, I think, that comes right out of the Hammer horror movies that Tim Burton so loved as a kid. He feeds that into a lot of his work, and that definitely is evident here with the character of the Penguin. Now, Danny DeVito got I don't know if he won, but certainly he was nominated for a Razzie Award for Worst Actor, Worst Performance of the Year in 1992, apparently. I think the people who do the Razzies, I've always hated the Razzie Awards. I think they're absolute crap. But to suggest that this is one of the worst performances of the year, those people seriously need to check themselves. Because the level of commitment to this role that Danny DeVito puts in, I would say it's the other way around. I would say you're looking more closer towards an Oscar rather than a Razzie. It boggles my mind that he could have ever been nominated for a Razzie, let alone win, for this performance. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But I can understand why people might not like this character, because he's filthy, he's oily, he's grimy, he's yeah. A lot of his plot involves sewerage and just killing of children. So I get it. I really get it. But I just think, yeah, Burton knows what he's doing, knows what he wants. DeVito commits, and it makes for one of the most despicably vile, monstrous, and yet somehow sympathetic villains throughout the Schumacher and Burton years.
Impressive.
Number 3 is the Riddler, played by Jim Carrey from the Schumacher film Batman Forever. I've already talked a little bit about him. Yeah, once he comes into it, so he's a little bit like the Poison Ivy character, because if you look at Batman and Robin, it is essentially a rehash of Batman Forever. It's just that everything is worse and more neon. So it's a lesser version of Batman Forever. And the Riddler character kind of follows the same route that the Poison Ivy character does. It's just that Jim Carrey knows what he's doing with it. He's very good at going large, whereas I feel I feel that Uma Thurman isn't. So this is more suited to Jim Carrey's talent for going large, going big, making us laugh, and just looking crazy. So yeah. I'm not sure many people could pull off the costume he wears in this, but he does, because he's just this bendy rubber man who's very much in line with Frank Gorshin's Riddler from the 60s TV show. It works. It's perfect casting. But ultimately, he is the villain with the master plan. He's sucking the intelligence from the rest of Gotham. As a result of that, he poses a threat, because the more intelligent he gets, the more dangerous he becomes. And again, because of Carey's performance, this guy's always just a little off kilter. Well, a lot off kilter. His mimicry of Bruce Wayne, like right down to putting the little beauty spot thing on his cheek when he goes to a party, wearing the same suit as Bruce Wayne is wearing, putting the same glasses on. Yeah, so he's basically a stalker. This dude is a stalker. He's been hurt by Bruce Wayne, so he wants to hurt Bruce Wayne back. And finding out that Bruce Wayne is Batman is just the icing on the cake, which means that he is now going against Batman, not just Bruce Wayne. So, yeah. So this guy is just all levels of crazy, which makes him a real threat to the city. He's not just someone who's just interested in banks. He don't care about robbing the Second National Bank of Gotham on the 2nd anniversary of the whole Two-Face gimmick. No, this is a guy who actually has a plan. almost comes to fulfilling it, and as a result poses a threat.
Meow.
Number 2 for me is Catwoman from Batman Returns, as played by Michelle Pfeiffer. This is one of my favourite villains. It's certainly my favourite iteration of Catwoman. I was a huge Michelle Pfeiffer fan back in the day, mostly as a result of this film, of this performance. Yeah, she's a very dangerous character. The reason she doesn't quite get the top spot is because she isn't the kind of character that poses a threat to Gotham. She's not that character. I would say I actually prefer her over, which you obviously now know what my number 1 is, which is Joker. I personally, I think, prefer her as a character to the Joker from the first Tim Burton Batman film, just because of who she is as a character, her personal connection to Bruce Wayne, and just her story arc, you know, the beaten down receptionist kind of becoming an empowered woman, but also a little bit crazy. And just the performance by Pfeiffer. I think her performance is like next level, even from a physical level, doing all the whip work herself. But it is very much a personal kind of villain when it comes to her relationship between her and Batman and Max Schreck. There's this kind of triangle thing going on there, and it's much more intimate. And so all of her villainy kind of comes out of that. But I do like her as a character. I think she's got a lot more depth than the other characters, the other villains, shall we say, in the Burton Schumacher kind of sphere. And again, a lot of that is brought to it by the performance from Pfeiffer. I just think she doesn't pose that much of a threat citywide, because that's not of any interest to her. That's not who she is as a character. She doesn't care about wiping out the city or this, that, and the other. She's not that kind of villain. She's more the personal kind. She's got some relationship issues with various people, and the bad things that she does come out of that, and it stays personal. It remains personal. But as a result, I'm more invested because of that personal thing that's going on there between Batman and Catwoman and Selina Kyle and Bruce Wayne. She's kind of my number 1 when it comes to favourites. But if I'm talking about, well, who's the best villain from these years, then obviously number 1, it's got to be the Joker.
Come on, you gruesome son of a bitch. Come to me.
1, he's all levels of crazy. 2, we got an excellent performance from Jack Nicholson that really set the bar for what a comic book villain needed to be from here on out. So many people kind of aped Jack Nicholson's performance here and wanted to be the next big comic book villain. I've got to go to number 11. Nicholson does it without seemingly trying. He just has a certain level of crazy about him, the way he looks, his eyebrows, whatever it is. That smile comes on. The dude looks crazy, he's already halfway there. But then, yeah, just the way he acts, it's full on Joker. It's absolutely brilliant. And he poses a genuine threat to the city. And because of his craziness, because he can turn on a dime, you don't know what he's going to do. We have scenes in this where he'll take out one of his own goons, like Bob the Goon. We've got his number 1 underling all the way through the movie, and just because he's feeling down, just because he's feeling like Batman's usurped his plan, he needs to take it out on someone, so he puts a bullet in him.
Bob? Gun.
He kills his number 1 guy, and so that's the level of thinking there with the Joker, in that that's the kind of threat he is, the unpredictable nature of him. He could go anywhere at any point. And then he at one point tries to poison half the city, gathers them all together and lets out this poisonous gas, intending to kill them all. So this dude is an absolute threat. His motives can shift at any point, depending on how he's feeling. which makes him unpredictable, and he's just entertaining to watch as well because of the performance that Nicholson gives. So because of all that, he is my number one. Again, like I say, my favourite, probably Catwoman, probably mostly because of Michelle Pfeiffer. But if I'm just looking at it on paper, who makes for the best villain throughout these 4 movies, it's got to be the Joker. Most threatening, most unpredictable, crazy performance, iconic. But yeah, there you go. That's how I would rank the 9 villains from the Schumacher and Burton years. But what about you? How would you rank them? Let me know down in the comments section below. Let me know what you think of my choices. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.